Hello there and welcome to Science in Slippers, your cozy corner of curiosity where bedtime isn't the end of the day but the beginning of a gentle journey through the wonders of science. Tonight, we're going to explore something that's been with you every moment of your life, something so familiar you may have never stopped to notice it. We're diving into the symphony of your senses, the quiet, brilliant orchestra your body conducts to understand the world around you, from the light bouncing through your eyes to the hum of distant sounds in your ears, from the softness of your bed sheets to the rhythm of your breath. You are quite literally surrounded by sensation. But how does it all work? And what is a sense really? Is it just the big five sights: sound, smell, taste, touch? Or is there more to your sensory world than meets the eye or ear or nose? Before we drift too far into the science, I'd love it if you could take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps a great deal, and it lets me keep making these calm explorations for curious minds like yours. And while you're here, let me know in the comments, where in the world are you listening from tonight? And what time is it for you? I'm always amazed by how many time zones tuck in with us now. I do hope this video isn't so interesting that it keeps you awake. But if it does, well, at least you'll be learning something fascinating while you lie there wide-eyed and wondering about your eardrums. So, settle in, get comfortable, maybe take a deep breath or two, let the outside world soften around the edges. And let's begin with the story of your senses, the symphony of how you feel the world and how the world feels you. Let's start with a story you already know, sort of. Once upon a time, probably in a brightly lit classroom filled with the smell of whiteboard markers and the quiet creak of plastic chairs, you were told that humans have five senses: sight, hearing, smell, taste, and touch. And that's it. Neat, simple, clean enough to fit on a poster with cartoon eyeballs and noses, smiling proudly in a rainbow of labeled arrows. But here's the twist: that list, it's wildly incomplete. The big five aren't wrong, they're just the tip of the iceberg. Or rather, the opening notes in a much grander symphony. The idea of five senses goes all the way back to Aristotle, that famously curious Greek philosopher who once decided that everything in the universe could be sorted into tidy little categories. He was doing his best, really. He looked around, noticed five ways humans seem to take in information, and declared, voila, five senses. But the human body, it turns out, didn't get the memo. It went and built dozens of sensory systems, ranging from the obvious to the delightfully obscure. You are in fact an absolute sensory powerhouse. You just don't always notice it. Let's take a closer look. We'll begin with what those old Greek scrolls missed entirely: the sense of balance. Even if you close your eyes, spin in a circle and stop, your brain usually has a pretty good idea which way is up, unless you're on a roller coaster, in which case it politely checks out for a moment and files a complaint. That's your vestibular system at work, an elegant little arrangement of canals and crystals in your inner ear that constantly monitor your body's orientation in space. It helps you stand upright, walk in a straight line, and not tip over like an unsteady bookshelf. Every time you reach for a glass of water, then there's proprioception, possibly the most unsung of all the senses. It's your body's sense of itself. Thanks to proprioception, you can scratch your nose in the dark without poking yourself in the eye, or type on a keyboard without looking at your fingers. It's how your brain knows where your limbs are, even if you're not watching them like a suspicious cat. We also have nociception, which is a fancy word for your sense of pain. It's not just ouch, it's an intricate alert system warning you when something is sharp, too hot, or just not sitting right. Pain gets a bad reputation, but without it, you'd walk around blissfully, unaware of things like stubbed toes, strained muscles, or a sunburn slowly broiling your shoulders. Now what about temperature? That's thermoception. Your skin is lined with tiny thermoreceptors that detect heat and cold, and they don't just stop at surface temperature. Your body also senses internal temperature, which is how you know when you're too warm under the blanket or need a second pair of socks. And speaking of internal awareness, let's not forget interception, the quiet background. Awareness of what's going on inside you: hunger, thirst, a full bladder, the slow rhythm of your heartbeat, the flutter in your stomach. Before a big decision, these signals may not always be loud, but they're constant, guiding your behavior in ways you might not even notice, feeling a bit more crowded than the big five might have led you to believe. You're not alone. Researchers today recognize at least 15 to 20 distinct senses, depending on how you count them. Some even argue for more, including things like the sense of time, which admittedly is a bit fuzzy when you're waiting in line or trying to fall asleep after too much coffee. Even animals have senses we don't like. Echolocation in bats or magnetoreception in birds that lets them navigate using Earth's magnetic field. Some scientists believe humans may have a very faint version of that too. Though if you've ever gotten lost in a shopping mall parking garage, it's probably not your strongest skill. So why then do we still teach the big five? Well, because it's a convenient place to start. It's simple, familiar, and the five traditional senses are undeniably important. They're just not the whole picture, but what's truly wonderful is this: all of your senses, whether famous or forgotten, work together in harmony to create your perception of the world. They blend, overlap, and collaborate constantly. Smell influences, taste, vision guides, balance, touch, and proprioception weave together to help you move with grace, or at least with mild coordination, and your brain, it doesn't keep these senses in tidy little boxes. It treats them like musicians in a vast orchestra, tuning, syncing, and adjusting their input to form one seamless composition of reality. What you see, hear, feel, it's not raw data, it's a carefully constructed experience. There's even a term for this interplay: multisensory integration. Your brain takes signals from different senses and stitches them into something meaningful. That's why a potato chip doesn't feel crunchy unless you can hear it, or why watching someone stub their toe can make you wheezy in sympathy. Your senses aren't isolated instruments. They play together constantly, whether you're aware of it or not. So next time you pause to take in your surroundings, the dim glow of your bedroom lamp, the soft rustle of your blanket, the gentle hum of night sounds, remember that it's not just five senses painting that picture. It's a chorus, a whole symphony, and you're the one listening from the very center of it all. Of all the senses, sight tends to hog the spotlight. Literally, it's the sense most people say they'd least want to lose, and it's easy to see why. The world is drenched in light and color, in motion and shadow, in tiny visual details that stitch together our daily lives. But vision isn't just about seeing, it's about interpreting light, and your brain is doing some truly spectacular acrobatics behind the scenes. Let's begin with the basics. Light travels in waves, tiny packets of energy zipping through space at speeds that would make race cars weep. Some of this light bounces off the things around you. Your cat, your coffee mug, that suspicious laundry pile you've been pretending isn't there, and some of it makes its way into your eyes, and this is where things start getting impressive. Your eyes don't actually see anything. They're just specialized detectors, like biological cameras, but way more sophisticated. Light enters through the cornea, passes through the pupil, which changes size depending on how bright it is, and then hits the lens, which fine-tunes the focus, like an auto-adjusting magnifying glass. Finally, the light reaches the retina, a thin layer of tissue at the back of your eye that's absolutely packed with photoreceptors. Think of the retina as a movie screen where the world gets projected, except this screen is wired directly into your nervous system. Now, let's meet the stars of the show, rods and cones. Rods are the night owls. They're great in low light, but they don't do color. They're the reason you can sort of navigate to the fridge at 2 a.m. without tripping over the cat, though. Whether you actually avoid the cat is another matter. Cones, on the other hand, love the spotlight. They're active in bright light and come in 3 varieties. One tuned to red, one to green, and one to blue together. They let you perceive millions of colors, that vibrant orange of a sunset, that's your cones mixing red and green light into a creamy gradient that makes poets swoon. Fun fact, birds have 4 types of cones, meaning they can see ultraviolet light. So the next time you see a pigeon bobbing its head like it knows something you don't, it probably does back to the retina. Once light hits those photoreceptors, it's turned into electrical signals, tiny pulses of information that travel down the optic nerve and straight to your brain. But what your brain receives isn't a high-definition image. It's a chaotic flood of data that needs to be cleaned, sorted, and interpreted on the fly. Entered the visual cortex, the part of your brain that processes visual information. It's a bit like a backstage crew scrambling to arrange props, lighting, and scenery, just in time for each new frame of the play. It figures out what's an edge, what's a shape, what's moving, and what's still. It even corrects for the constant bobbing of your head, stabilizing your vision so you're not seasick every time you nod. And the best part, it does all of this without you ever noticing. Now here's something slightly mind-bending. The image projected onto your retina is actually upside down. Your brain flips it automatically because it turns out your head isn't a snow globe and walking on ceilings would be inconvenient. And that's not the only trick your brain pulls. There's a spot in each eye where the optic nerve exits the retina, and in that spot there are no photoreceptors. That's right. You have a blind spot in each eye, but unless you go looking for it, you won't notice. Why? Because your brain fills in the gap. It looks at the surrounding area and says more beige wall, I suppose, and just paints it in, like a visual intern airbrushing your perception in real time. This visual editing gets even weirder when we talk about optical illusions. You've probably seen those images where two lines look like different lengths, but aren't, or colors seem to shift depending on what surrounds them. Those aren't failures of vision. They're proof that your brain isn't just receiving images, it's interpreting them. And sometimes it makes creative decisions. It gets even more curious with something called change blindness, where large visual changes happen right in front of someone and they don't notice. Magicians love this. Your brain is constantly prioritizing information. Is that a tiger? No, then I won't worry about it. This allows you to focus without being overwhelmed by visual noise, but it also means your perception is, shall we say, negotiable. Let's take a moment to appreciate just how much your brain relies on vision. It's estimated that about 30 to 50% of your brain's cortex is involved in processing visual information in some way. That's a staggering commitment. Like your brain is running a 247 IMAX theater just to keep you informed, and yet vision is not invincible. Some people are born without it, others lose it later in life. And what happens then is one of the brain's most impressive feats: neuroplasticity. When visual input disappears, the brain doesn't just sit around twiddling its neurons. It reallocates that processing power to other senses. That's why people who are blind often develop heightened abilities in touch, hearing, and memory. The brain, it seems, is endlessly adaptable, and for those with sight, it's important to remember that we don't see with our eyes, we see with our brains. The eyes are just the opening act. The brain takes the stage and transforms light into experience. So the next time you open your eyes in the morning and see the soft blue of the sky, or the shimmer of light on water, or the way shadows stretch across a quiet room, know that it's not just your eyes doing the work, it's your brain conducting a masterpiece, turning photons into poetry. And even if you close your eyes, the world you saw lingers, not as data, but as memory, color, and meaning, all born from light and shaped by the incredible machinery within you. If sight is the art of interpreting light, then hearing is the magic of catching invisible motion. Sound is movement rippling through the air like a whispered wave, and your ears are exquisitely tuned to catch these ripples and turn them into meaning. So let's lean in and listen to how it all works. Sound begins with vibration. Something, anything, shakes, and that movement pushes against the air molecules around it. These molecules bump into their neighbors, and so on, creating a pressure wave that travels outward, like ripples on a pond. When those ripples reach your ears, your body gets to work. Your outer ear, the visible part, the part that sticks out and politely holds your glasses, is called the P. It's shaped to catch sound waves and funnel them down your ear canal, where they eventually collide with the eardrum, a delicate membrane that vibrates in response. This is where the real fun begins. Behind the eardrum sits the tiniest percussion section in the human body, 3 miniature bones with charming names, the malleus, incus, and stapes, also known as the hammer, anvil, and stirrup. These bones are smaller than a grain of rice, and together they make up the oicals, the smallest bones in the human body. Their job is to amplify the vibrations from the drum and pass them deeper into the ear. Next stop, the cochlear picture, a snail shell coiled and fluid-filled lined with thousands of microscopic hair cells. Not hairs in the way you'd find on your head, but delicate structures that wave back and forth when the fluid inside the cochlea moves. Each of these hair cells is tuned to a specific frequency of sound. Low frequencies activate hair cells near the wider end, while high frequencies tickle the cells toward the tight, narrow tip. This system lets you distinguish the deep rumble of thunder from the high pitch of a bird call, or the satisfying crunch of toast from the chime of your phone, reminding you to stop watching videos and go to sleep. When those hair cells bend, they generate electrical signals which travel along the auditory nerve to the brain, where everything gets translated into sound. Except here's the twist. Your brain doesn't receive sound at all. It receives patterns of electrical impulses. It's the brain's job to decide that this pattern means the wind in the trees, and that one means your neighbor's dog. Again, sound, like sight, is a construction, a rich mental interpretation of a physical wave, and your brain is astonishingly good at it. Let's talk about localization, your ability to tell where a sound is coming from. Even with your eyes closed, you can point to the source of a sound with surprising accuracy. Your brain pulls this off by comparing tiny differences in timing and volume between your two ears. If someone calls your name from the left, the sound reaches your left ear just a fraction of a second before it reaches your right. That's all your brain needs to triangulate the location. It's doing constant math, but it's polite enough not to tell you about it. Another marvel is your ability to focus on one sound among many, like a single voice at a busy party. This is known as the cocktail party effect, and it's your brain's way of zooming in on one auditory thread while tuning out the rest, unless someone says your name in another conversation. Then suddenly your ears perk up like a deer in a forest. Your brain is always listening, even when you think it isn't. And then there are earworms, those little loops of music that get stuck in your head for hours, refusing to leave, no matter how many other songs you try to replace them with. Researchers believe earworms are caused by involuntary memory recall, a kind of mental hiccup where your brain replays catchy patterns even without external sound. There's also the curious case of misophonia, where specific sounds trigger intense emotional reactions. Chewing, pen clicking, or that one ringtone everyone in your office uses. Nobody's entirely sure why this happens, but it's further proof that sound is processed not just in the hearing parts of your brain, but in areas connected to emotion and memory too. Hearing also has a deep emotional dimension. A piece of music can move you to tears or give you goosebumps. The sound of a loved one's voice can calm you instantly, even if you're having the kind of day where the toast burns and the cap throws up on your sock. This emotional connection to sound is deeply wired. Humans are social creatures, and vocal communication is one of our oldest tools. Long before we could write things down, we sang, hummed, shouted, whispered. We told stories around fires and cried out warnings across valleys. Your brain is incredibly sensitive to tone, pitch, rhythm, and inflection. It listens not just to what is said, but how it's said. Now, like all senses, hearing isn't perfect. Over time, exposure to loud noise can damage those precious cochlea hair cells, and unlike the hair on your head, these don't grow back. That's why some people develop hearing loss, especially with age, or after too many loud concerts where your earplugs friends. But the story doesn't end there. Technology steps in with remarkable solutions: hearing aids that amplify sound, and cochlear implants that bypass damaged hair cells altogether, sending signals straight to the auditory nerve. It's another testament to how adaptable both science and the human brain can be. And for people who are deaf or hard of hearing, sound may not be the primary way to engage with the world, but communication, connection, and perception still flourish through visual language, vibration, and touch. The human experience is vast and varied, and hearing is just one thread in its rich tapestry. So, the next time you hear a favorite song, or the rain tapping on your window, or the comforting creak of your home settling into the night, pause and appreciate the layers of meaning carried by invisible waves. Your ears are instruments, your brain, the conductor, and together they play the quiet music of motion that shapes the world around. You take a deep breath, not just for relaxation though, that's a lovely side effect, but because in doing so you're pulling in tiny, airborne messages from the world around you, invisible molecules drifting on currents of air, carrying with them a whole history of smells. The scent of rain on dry pavement, fresh bread from the corner bakery, someone's shampoo on the breeze, the warning musk of something suspicious in the back of the fridge, all of it instantly recognizable. Smell is fast, emotional, intimate, and it might just be the most ancient sense you have. Let's start with the biology. High up inside your nose behind the bridge is a patch of tissue called the olfactory epithelium. It's only about the size of a postage stamp, but don't be fooled. It's densely packed with around 400 types of olfactory receptors, and each one is specialized to detect different types of scent molecules. When you breathe in, those molecules float up into your nasal cavity and bind to receptors like keys, fitting into microscopic locks. This triggers a signal that travels along the olfactory nerves straight to the brain. And here's the part that makes smell so special. That signal bypasses the usual traffic circle of sensory input. Most senses go through the thalamus first, which acts like a busy receptionist, routing signals to the appropriate brain regions. Not smell. Smell takes the back staircase straight to the olfactory bulb, which sits right next to the limbic system, the part of your brain that handles emotion and memory. This is why a single whiff of something familiar can transport you through time, like a sensory time machine. The smell of sun-warmed grass might take you back to childhood summers. A hint of cinnamon might pull up memories of holidays, or a grandmother's kitchen, or that one time you learned the hard way that cinnamon and chili powder are not the same. It's not just nostalgia, it's neurology. Smell and memory are roommates, practically sharing a toothbrush. Now, humans aren't exactly famous for their noses. Compared to dogs who have up to 300 million olfactory receptors, we seem a bit under-equipped, but we're not as bad as we think. Humans can distinguish over 1 trillion different scents. That's trillion with a T. Your nose might not be great at tracking a deer through the forest, but it can tell whether your leftovers are edible with unsettling accuracy. Interestingly, your ability to smell can shift depending on context. Things smell different when you're hungry or sick or pregnant, or even when you're just in a different mood. Stress can dampen your sense of smell. Comfort can sharpen it. Your nose is a subtle instrument, constantly adjusting. Smell also plays a quiet role in flavor. When you eat, scent molecules from the food travel up the back of your throat and reach the olfactory epithelium, a process called retronasal ulaction. That's why when you have a cold and your nose is stuffy, everything tastes like cardboard. Your tongue can only detect 5 basic tastes: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, and umami. But your nose does the heavy lifting when it comes to distinguishing buttery croissant from plain toast. This is also why food scientists, perfumers, and winemakers spend entire careers developing their sense of smell. It's both art and science, and they treat their noses with the kind of reverence most people reserve for opera singers or world-class violinists. But let's not forget the other side of smell. It's emotional punch. Some scents soothe: lavender, chamomile, clean linen. Some excite: fresh coffee, sizzling garlic, the sharp temps of sea air. Some repulse: sulfur, decay, or the unmistakable alarm bell of sour milk. Your brain has built-in responses to these smells, wired by evolution to keep you safe and socially functional. And speaking of social function, your nose may be detecting more than you think. Humans, like many animals, release tiny, often undetectable chemical signals known as pheromones. The science here is still emerging and often overhyped, but there's evidence that smell plays a role in subtle social cues. attraction bonding, even picking up on someone's mood or stress levels. You might not be consciously aware of it, but your nose is gathering data in the background like a social radar with a slightly scented readout. Now, not everyone experiences smell in the same way. Some people have anosmia, the loss or absence of the sense of smell. For others, scent is heightened hyperosmia, which can be overwhelming, and some conditions like parosmia can distort smells, making pleasant scents seem foul, or vice versa. The olfactory system is delicate and tightly integrated with brain function, so even small changes can create big sensory shifts. Still, for most of us, smell is an ever-present background character in our daily story, subtle but powerful, and perhaps what makes smell so poetic is that it's fleeting. You can't bottle a moment. The warm scent of someone's sweater, the mix of pine and snow and winter air, the dusty sweetness of old books, these come and go, ungraspable, like ghosts passing through your awareness. You smell them, you feel something, and then they're gone. Smell isn't just a sense, it's a storyteller, one that speaks in quiet whispers carried on the air, saying, "Remember this, so breathe in." Not just because your lungs like it, but because your mind does too. There's a whole hidden world riding on every breeze. And your nose, it's been quietly keeping track for longer than you know. Imagine biting into a warm slice of buttered toast. Crunchy on the outside, soft in the middle, just a hint of salt from the butter, and somehow it tastes like comfort itself. But how welcome to the wonderful, surprisingly complex world of taste, your body's built-in flavor decoder. It's more than just a matter of sweet or salty taste, is a quiet collaboration between your tongue, your nose, your brain, and a whole symphony of subtle cues. Let's start where the magic happens, your taste buds. Your tongue is home to somewhere between 2,000 and 8,000 taste buds, and each one contains 50 to 100 receptor cells that respond to different chemicals in your food. When you eat something, molecules dissolve in your saliva and bind to these receptors, triggering a cascade of signals that head to your brain with a simple message: "Hey, we've got flavor." But here's the first plot twist. Your tongue doesn't have strict taste zones. You may have heard that sweet is at the tip, bitter at the back, salty on the sides, but that's more myth than map. All parts of your tongue can detect all 5 basic tastes. Some regions might be slightly more sensitive to certain ones, but there's no flavor turf war going on in your mouth. Now about those 5 basic tastes, sweet nature's way of saying this might have calories. Our bodies are primed to enjoy sweetness because it often signals energy-rich foods like fruit or honey. It's the reason your brain lights up at the sight of cake with the same enthusiasm it might once have reserved for ripe berries. In the wild, salty essential for life. Salt helps regulate fluid balance and nerve function, and your taste buds are tuned to spot it. The appeal of salted popcorn, fries, or pretzels. That's your ancient biology whispering electrolyte sour. A useful warning sign. Sourness often means unripe fruit or spoiled milk, but in small doses, it also makes things bright and refreshing, like lemonade or a squeeze of lime. Your taste buds know the difference between zesty and suspicious bitter. Bitterness is your body's defense mechanism. Many toxic plants are bitter, so we evolved to be cautious about this flavor, but it's also acquired. Coffee, dark chocolate, kale. These all dance on the bitter edge, and some people grow to love them. It's a little like befriending a cat. The reward is in the patient's umami, often described as savory or meaty. Umami was only recognized as a basic taste in the early 20th century. It's triggered by glutamates found in things like mushrooms, soy sauce, Parmesan tomatoes, and broths. Umami is what makes soup feel nourishing, and why aged cheese is a religious experience, but taste alone doesn't tell the whole story. In fact, what you think of as flavor is mostly smell. When you chew, volatile molecules travel up a passage in your throat to your nose in a process called retronasal relaxation. If you pinch your nose while eating, you'll find that food becomes strangely bland. It's not your tongue's fault, it's just that your nose was doing most of the creative work all along. There's also texture. The mouthfeel of food, creamy, crunchy, chewy, crisp. These sensations are detected by touch receptors in your mouth and tongue, adding an entire layer to your eating experience. It's why soggy cereal is heartbreaking, and a crispy potato chip is oddly thrilling. And then there's temperature. Ice cream and hot cocoa both trigger taste buds, but part of their appeal is how they feel in your mouth. Temperature also affects how flavor is perceived. Warm foods often taste stronger because they release more aromatic molecules. You even taste with your ears in a roundabout way. Studies have shown that the sound of crunching can enhance your perception of crispness. This is why food commercials love close-up crunches. Your brain hears texture and believes it's tastier. Taste is also tangled up in expectation and memory. If you're told a wine is expensive, it might taste better, even if it's secretly from a box. If your childhood comfort food was macaroni and cheese, odds are it still tastes like reassurance. Even if you're now old enough to pay taxes, color plays a role too in experiments. People rated pink-colored drinks as sweeter, even when all samples were chemically identical. Your brain, it turns out, eats first with its eyes, and it's not above making assumptions. And of course, culture shapes tastes in powerful ways. What one society calls delicious, another might call daring. Fermented shark, popular in Iceland. Fried tarantula, Cambodian delicacy. Blue cheese, loved in France. Suspicious everywhere else. Taste isn't just about biology. It's also storytelling, habit, and tradition. Now, let's take a quick detour into the world of super tasters. People with an unusually high number of taste buds, they tend to experience flavors more intensely, especially bitterness. For them, Brussels sprouts might taste like a punishment rather than a vegetable. About 25% of the population qualifies as super tasters, while others fall on the opposite end of the spectrum and barely flinch at chili peppers. Speaking of peppers, spiciness isn't a taste at all. It's pain. Specifically, it's a chemical irritant called capsaicin that binds two heat-sensitive receptors in your mouth. That burning sensation, it's your body saying something's on fire, even though nothing actually is. The experience triggers a mild stress response, sweating, faster heartbeat, which for some reason people enjoy. It's a bit like skydiving for your tongue. But pain aside, taste serves a bigger role than just deciding whether something is yummy. It's part of your body's nutritional radar, guiding you toward what you need and away from what might harm you. It's ancient wisdom coded in molecules, and yet taste is also deeply personal to people. Can eat the same dish and describe it entirely differently. One might say it's bold and spicy. The other might say it tastes like regret. That's the beauty of it. Taste is a conversation between your body and your mind, shaped by biology, history, emotion, and even the mood you're in. So next time you take a bite of something delicious, whether it's a fancy 5-course meal or just a perfectly buttered piece of toast, take a moment to appreciate the orchestra at work. The tongue, the nose, the texture, the memory, all decoding the world in a language only you truly understand. You are wrapped in a miracle, not a metaphorical one though. That might be true too, but a literal biological masterpiece. Your skin, it's your largest organ, your first line of defense, your built-in thermostat, and the medium through which you feel everything from a warm hug to a pokey pebble in your shoe. Touch isn't just a sense, it's your most intimate connection to the physical world. Let's take a closer look, gently of course. Your skin is teeming with specialized nerve endings, each one designed to detect different types of contact: pressure, texture, vibration, temperature, stretch, itch, pain. It's like having a team of tiny translators under your surface, reporting in real time about the world around you. These nerve endings fall into a few broad categories. Mechanoreceptors respond to pressure and vibration. They're the reason you can feel the weight of a blanket, the fizz of soda bubbles, or the sharp jab of a Lego underfoot. A very specific form of betrayal. Thermoreceptors detect temperature, both heat and cold. Noroceptors specialize in pain, alerting you to things that are sharp, burning, or otherwise unfriendly. And then there are, say, tactile afferents, gentle touch receptors that respond best to soft, slow caresses, like the stroke of a loved one's hand or the comforting brush of fabric. These are the ones tied most closely to emotional warmth. In other words, touch isn't just about function, it's about feeling in every sense of the word now. Despite what you might have heard, your fingertips aren't the only sensitive parts of your body, but they are among the most densely packed with nerve endings, about 500 per square cm. That's why you can read Braille with your fingers or feel the difference between silk and sandpaper in a single swipe. The lips, face, and genitals are also highly sensitive, as are the soles of your feet, which is why stepping on cold tiles in the morning feels like a sensory ambush. Other parts of the body, like your back or thighs, have fewer receptors and aren't quite as finely tuned. Touch is unique among the senses in that it's bidirectional. With sight or hearing you receive input, but with touch you're also the one doing the touching. You feel the world, and you're felt by it every time. You press your hand against something, your body responds on both sides of the contact. It's a quiet dialogue between self and environment. Touch is also vital to development. Infants who are held, cuddled, and stroked grow faster, sleep better, and develop stronger emotional bonds. It's one of the first senses to emerge in the womb, and one of the last to fade in old age. Long before you could see your parents' faces, you could feel their embrace. Even as adults, touch remains essential for mental well-being. Hugs, handshakes, pats on the back, all small gestures with enormous impact. A single warm touch can lower stress levels, reduce heart rate, and increase the release of oxytocin, often called the love hormone. And during times of isolation, many people report missing touch more than conversation. We are quite literally wired to need it now. Touch is not always pleasant, and that's important. To pain is your body's early warning system. It tells you when something is sharp, too hot, or dangerously irritating. It helps you pull your hand away from a hot stove, or notice when a blister is forming, or stop you from running on a twisted ankle. And then there's the fascinating world of itch, which seems like pain's quirky cousin. It's often triggered by mild irritants, mosquito bites, wool sweaters, invisible rogue hairs, and is somehow both urgent and unsatisfying. Scratching an itch feels oddly good, even though you're technically making the irritation worse. It's your nervous system playing an endless game of, is this better? No. How about now? Touch also reveals some interesting brain quirks. For instance, have you ever tried to tickle yourself? Doesn't work. Your brain knows it's coming and suppresses the response. The cerebellum, the part of your brain involved in motor control, predicts your own movements and filters out expected sensations. That's why you don't notice your clothes all day until someone mentions them. Speaking of filtering, your brain constantly prioritizes touch information. If your shirt is slightly scratchy, your body will notice, but after a few minutes, your brain will likely mute the signal. It's not a crisis, so it's filed under ignore for now. This filtering is essential, otherwise you'd be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of input every second. Air pressure. Sock seems the texture of your chair, but sometimes the brain doesn't filter so neatly. Some people experience hypersensitivity to touch, common in sensory processing disorders and autism spectrum conditions. For them, light touches can feel overwhelming or even painful. Others may have reduced sensitivity, known as hyposensitivity, where it takes more intense stimuli to register. And in rare cases, people can develop all. Even gentle contact feels painful. Touch, like all senses, exists on a wide and personal spectrum. There's also the fascinating phenomenon of phantom touch, when someone loses a limb but still feels sensation where it used to be, or the rubber hand illusion, where if you stroke a fake hand in sync with a hidden real one, people often start to feel as though the rubber hand is part of them. This all points to a deeper truth. Your sense of touch isn't just in your skin, it's in your brain's map of your body, a mental model constantly updated based on experience. And this model can be surprisingly flexible when you use a tool, say a tennis racket, a pen, or a fork. Your brain quickly begins to treat it as an extension of your body. That's why you can catch a ball with a glove or delicately thread a needle without looking. Your sense of touch in a way expands to include the tools you wield. So touch isn't just physical, it's relational. It's how we feel the world, how the world feels us, and how we stay anchored in space and in connection and in the quiet of night, wrapped in your blankets with the softness of fabric against your skin and the coolness of the pillow on your cheek. That's your sense of touch gently reminding you you're here, you're safe, and the world is holding you back most of the time. You don't think about balance. It's the silent partner in nearly everything you do. Walking, standing, reaching, stretching, dancing, in the kitchen, even lying in bed, your body still quietly knows which way is up. But balance is not just about keeping upright, it's about spatial orientation, motion detection, and a lifelong battle against becoming an accidental YouTube fail video. So how do you stay on your feet without constantly toppling over? The answer lives deep inside your head, in a tiny spiral-shaped structure called the inner ear tucked within. It is the vestibular system, your body's personal gyroscope. It doesn't look like much, but it's one of the most elegant engineering solutions biology has to offer. This system includes 3 semicircular canals, looping tubes, each oriented in a different direction, like a 3-axis gimbal. These canals are filled with fluid, and when you move your head, the fluid inside shifts that movement, bends tiny hair-like structures inside, which then sends signals to your brain saying, hey, we're turning left, or maybe cartwheeling, possibly both. Alongside these canals are 2 little structures called the utricle and sacral. These detect linear movement forward, backward, up and down, and changes in head position. Relative to gravity, they contain tiny calcium crystals, affectionately known as otoliths, that sit on a jelly-like layer. When you move, these crystals shift and press on sensory hairs underneath, triggering signals to your brain. It's a bit like having a snow globe in your head, only instead of swirling glitter, you've got microscopic pebbles that help you tell up from down. All this data gets sent to several areas of your brain, including the cerebellum, which coordinates movement, and the brain stem, which manages automatic functions. The result, you maintain balance without even thinking about it most of the time anyway. But balance isn't a solo act. Your brain doesn't rely on the vestibular system alone. It cross-references visual input and proprioception, your body's internal sense of position. This multisensory teamwork is why standing on one foot in the dark feels much harder than in daylight. When your eyes are out of the picture, your brain has to work harder to figure out where you are in space, and that's also why motion sickness exists. Motion sickness is what happens when your senses disagree. Say you're reading a book on a moving bus, your eyes say we're sitting still. Nothing's happening, but your inner ear is shouting, we are moving at alarming speeds. The brain, unable to reconcile this argument, sometimes throws its hands up and triggers nausea as a kind of error message. It's not pleasant, but it's impressively democratic. The opposite can happen too. In virtual reality, your eyes are convinced you're flying through space, but your vestibular system insists you're sitting on the couch, mildly confused. This disconnect can lead to a wobbly sort of disorientation, like your brain's been temporarily double-booked. And then there's vertigo, a spinning sensation often caused by tiny particles in your inner ear getting dislodged and floating into places they shouldn't be. It's the biological equivalent of a marble rattling around in a pinball machine. Fortunately, many cases can be treated with specific head movements that coax the particles back to where they belong. It's like gentle chiropractic for your inner ear crystals. Balance also changes throughout life. Infants spend months mastering the art of sitting, standing, and walking. Each wobbly step is a small miracle of coordination. With age, balance can decline, not because your body forgets how, but because the systems that support it become less responsive. That's why exercises like Tai Chi and yoga are especially recommended. For older adults, they help keep the balance machinery well-oiled, and athletes, they train their vestibular systems just like their muscles. Gymnasts, skaters, dancers, and martial artists develop an astonishing ability to spin, twist, and flip without losing track of up and down. If you've ever tried a somersault as an adult and ended up questioning all of your life choices, that's why. It's not just flexibility you lose, it's orientation, confidence. There's also a curious connection between balance and mental focus. Some studies suggest that even small challenges to balance, like standing on one foot, can temporarily improve concentration. There's something about physical instability that sharpens the mind. Your body knows that staying upright is important, and it seems to pull cognitive resources into play to make it happen. It's multitasking with a slight edge of danger. But despite its complexity, balance rarely demands your attention. You don't think about stabilizing your head while turning or recalibrating your stance. When someone hands you a heavy bag, you just do it. Your vestibular system hums quietly in the background, keeping you oriented and upright, until of course it doesn't. Then you notice that moment when you trip on nothing, or sway on a boat dock, or try to balance on one leg and feel like a particularly unsteady flamingo. Suddenly balance becomes very noticeable, and maybe that's what makes it such a beautiful sense. It's invisible when it works, yet essential to nearly everything you do. Walking across a room, turning your head, reaching without falling, or even just lying still in the dark, knowing which way is up. So the next time you stand without wobbling, walk without thinking, or turn your head without dizziness, give a little nod of thanks to your inner ear. It's been quietly spinning with you your entire life, and still hasn't asked for a break. Try this. Close your eyes, stretch out your arm and touch your nose. You did it right. Hopefully now consider this. How did you do it? Without looking. You didn't need to see your hand. You didn't have to feel your face first. Somehow, you just knew where your body was in space. That quiet confidence, that awareness of your limbs and joints and their movements, even in total darkness, is thanks to your proprioceptive sense, often called the sixth sense, or more dramatically the ghost sense. Proprioception is your body's internal GPS. It's the reason you can walk without watching your feet, hold a cup without staring at your hand, or touch type while watching a video about proprioception. Nicely done, by the way. So, how does it work? Proprioception comes from a network of receptors embedded in your muscles, joints, and tendons. These specialized sensors, known as muscle spindles and GI tendon organs, are constantly sending feedback to your brain about how much each muscle is stretching, how fast it's moving, and how much force it's generating. It's a bit like each part of your body constantly texting your brain to say, hey, I'm over here doing this much work. The brain takes all of these messages and builds a dynamic map of your body in real time. A mental model of where everything is, what it's doing, and how it's moving. All this happens automatically and at lightning speed. When you reach for a glass of water, you don't need to calculate the exact angles of your elbow or measure the extension of your fingers. Your brain already has that data. It coordinates your muscles and joints like a team of synchronized swimmers, quietly choreographed and incredibly precise. And just like sight or hearing, this sense can be fooled. Ever had your foot fall asleep? That fuzzy, numb feeling is what happens when proprioception temporarily goes offline. Your brain loses track of the foot's position, and suddenly, walking becomes an awkward experiment. You know your foot should be there, but it might as well be attached to someone else. You're like a puppet whose strings just got temporarily tangled. Or take the classic trick with the nose illusion. Cross your fingers and touch your nose with the tips. It feels weirdly like you're touching two noses. Your brain gets confused because your crossed fingers are sending conflicting spatial signals. Proprioception meets logic, and they politely disagree. Then there's the even more peculiar world of phantom limbs. When someone loses a limb, they often continue to feel sensations where the limb used to be. Itches, pressure, even pain. This happens because the brain's map of the body schema, still includes the missing part. The body may be changed, but the brain's internal blueprint hasn't fully caught up. In a way, the ghost of the limb lives on in the mind, and it doesn't stop there. You can actually expand your proprioceptive sense beyond your body. When you use a tool, a tennis racket, a cane, even a fork, your brain starts to include that object in your body's schema. It begins to feel the tool's presence, adjusting movements and posture accordingly. That's why you can become skilled at threading a needle, driving a car, or using chopsticks without needing to relearn where your hand ends and the tool begins. Your sense of proprioception is incredibly adaptable, and that's a good thing, because modern life throws a lot of curve balls ever tried walking after sitting for a long time and felt like a baby deer on ice? Or tried to do yoga after a long day and discovered your arms had apparently forgotten how long they are? That's proprioception. Reorienting itself, it constantly updates based on movement, injury, fatigue, and even mood. Speaking of mood, yes, emotions can influence proprioception. Stress and anxiety can alter posture, tighten muscles, and change the way you move. People who are anxious often carry their bodies more rigidly. Those who are sad may slump over time. These changes can affect your body map, leading to changes in how you perceive movement and position. It's a feedback loop between mind and motion. Some people have impaired proprioception either from injury, neurological disorders, or developmental conditions. For example, individuals with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which affects connective tissue, often have trouble sensing where their joints are. Others, like those with autism, may experience proprioception differently, seeking or avoiding certain types of movement to help regulate their sensory experience. And in rare but illuminating cases, people can lose their proprioception entirely. One famous example is Ian Waterman, who lost all sense of touch and proprioception from the neck down due to a viral infection. He had to relearn how to move by watching his body, constantly using vision to compensate for the loss of internal feedback. It's a powerful reminder of just how much we rely on this invisible sense, but for most of us, proprioception works quietly, faithfully, and without much fuss. It's the sense that lets you move with grace, catch a ball, dance without thinking, or simply roll over in bed without falling off the side. And like many things that work well, we rarely notice it until it doesn't. So next time you close your eyes and stretch your arms, marvel at the fact that you know exactly where they are. That your body is narrating its position without needing sight, sound, or speech. That you are at all times aware of your physical self in space, even if you're not thinking about it. In a world that's often full of noise and distraction, proprioception is your silent compass, a whispering voice that says, "You're here, you're moving, and this is your shape in the world." Some senses are showy, full of color and music, movement and meaning. Others work more quietly, tucked into the background, only stepping forward when something needs urgent attention. Thermoception and noception belong to the latter camp. You probably don't think about them until your bath is too hot, or your tea is too cold, or you step barefoot onto a forgotten Lego. But these two senses are essential. They help you navigate comfort and avoid harm. One keeps you warm and cozy, the other keeps you from being barbecued. Let's start with thermoception, your sense of temperature. Thermoception relies on specialized thermoreceptors in your skin, which come in two varieties: those that detect heat and those that detect cold. These receptors are scattered across your body like tiny sentinels, always on the lookout for temperature changes. When you touch something warm, heat-sensitive receptors fire off signals to your brain saying toasty vibes incoming. If you pick up something cold, the cold receptors chime in with, "Whoa, we're losing heat fast." Your brain receives these alerts and decides whether to enjoy the sensation or to yank your hand away from the ice cream tub you left out too long. Interestingly, your body also has core thermoreceptors located deep in the brain and along the spinal cord. These monitor internal temperature, helping regulate functions like shivering, sweating, and blood flow. That's how your body maintains a stable internal environment, a process called thermoregulation. Think of it as your personal home thermostat, except it also makes you take your sweater off when things get serious. Neuroscience isn't just about extremes, it's also a key part of comfort. The warmth of a blanket, the cool side of the pillow, the soft chill of evening air on your skin, all of these are processed by your thermal sense. It's part of what makes certain moments feel soothing, even luxurious. But temperature perception is also relative. Step into a warm pool after being in the sun, and it might feel cool. Step into the same water after a cold breeze, and it feels gloriously hot. Your skin adjusts its expectations, constantly interpreting temperature not as an absolute value, but in comparison to what came just before. In other words, your body loves context. And then there are temperature illusions, like thermal grill illusion, where interlacing warm and cool bars on the skin can create the bizarre sensation of burning heat. Even though nothing dangerous is happening, it's a reminder that your brain is not just reading the inputs, it's interpreting them, sometimes with surprising creativity. Now, let's turn to noception, your sense of pain. Pain may not be anyone's favorite sensation, but it's one of the most important. Without it, you'd be like a car without a check engine light, possibly fine for a while. But one day the wheels fall off, and you're not sure why. Pain begins with nociceptors, specialized nerve endings that detect potentially damaging stimuli, things that are too sharp, too hot, too cold, or too intense. When activated, they send an urgent message to your brain: something's wrong, deal with it now. Nociceptors come in different types. Mechanical nociceptors respond to pressure or injury, like cuts or pinches. Thermal nociceptors react to extreme heat or cold. Chemical nociceptors respond to harmful substances like acids or chili peppers. Yes, that spicy salsa that sets your mouth on fire. It's not heat, it's capsaicin, a molecule in chili peppers that tricks your thermal nociceptors into thinking your tongue is literally burning, and your brain, ever obliging, responds accordingly. Sweat, tears, mild panic, and a slightly dramatic reach for milk. Pain doesn't just help you avoid injury, it also helps you heal. After you twist an ankle or cut your finger, pain encourages you to protect that part of the body, to move more carefully, and to give it time to recover. It's your body's way of saying, let's not do that again. But pain is not always straightforward. There's acute pain, sharp and sudden, like a stubbed toe, and there's chronic pain, persistent, lingering long after the original injury has healed. Chronic pain is more complex, often involving changes in the nervous system itself. The brain can become hypersensitive, interpreting normal signals as threats. It's as if the volume knob got stuck on screaming. And then there's referred pain, where discomfort shows up in a different place than the problem. For example, a heart attack might cause pain in the left arm or jaw. The nervous system sometimes shares signal pathways, and the brain gets the wires a bit crossed. One of the more curious forms of pain is emotional pain, heartbreak, grief, loneliness. Though these experiences aren't caused by physical injury, they often activate the same brain regions as physical pain. A breakup and a broken toe may not be the same thing, but your brain processes both as deeply unpleasant. It's one of the reasons emotional pain can feel so physical. Your body listens to your heart, literally. So what happens when these systems go wrong? Some people are born with congenital insensitivity to pain, a rare condition where the body simply doesn't register injury. While this might sound like a superpower, it's incredibly dangerous. Without pain, cuts go unnoticed, infections worsen, bones break silently. Pain isn't pleasant, but it is protective. At the other end of the spectrum are people with central pain syndrome or fibromyalgia, where the nervous system amplifies pain signals. The pain is real, even if there's no visible injury. It's a reminder that pain is not just a message, it's a perception shaped by the brain, and that brings us full circle. Both thermoception and noception help you navigate a world that can be both inviting and dangerous. They guide you toward warmth and safety. They alert you to injury and excess. They help you seek comfort and avoid harm. These senses may be quiet most of the time, but when they speak, you listen. So the next time you warm your hands by a fire, or shiver as a breeze sneaks past your collar, or yelp after touching a hot pan, know that your body is paying close attention. It's reading the world, not just for beauty and sound and taste, but for heat and danger, and the delicate line between comfort and caution. You've heard of sight, smell, touch, taste, hearing by now. You've also met balance, proprioception, temperature, and pain. But your body still has a few more surprises up its metaphorical sleeve. You see, the list of senses isn't closed. In fact, it's more like a guest list at a very exclusive science party, constantly being updated as we learn more about how we experience the world. Some senses are obvious once you name them, others are sneakier, operating in the background. Like polite ghosts with clipboards, these are your extra and emergent senses, the ones that don't fit neatly into a classroom chart but still shape your everyday. Let's begin with one of the most mysterious: interoception. Interoception is your ability to sense the internal state of your body, not what's happening outside. What's happening within: hunger, thirst, fullness, the need to breathe, your heartbeat. A vague sense that something isn't quite right. It's not just physical signals, it's a deep background awareness. You might not constantly think about your lungs expanding or your stomach rumbling, but when something changes, you notice maybe your heart beats faster before a big moment, maybe you sense fatigue before you know why. That's interoception whispering from within, and it's more than just bodily maintenance. Interoception plays a major role in emotion regulation, that flutter of nervousness, that sinking feeling of dread. Those are your body and brain in conversation, physical sensations interpreted through a lens of memory, mood, and meaning. People vary widely in how attuned they are to their interoceptive signals. Some notice every heartbeat, others miss hunger cues entirely. It's a quiet personal sense, easily drowned out in the noise of modern life, but it's always there, quietly narrating the state of your internal world. Then there's chronoception, your sense of time. Now, time isn't something you can touch or smell or point at, but you experience it nonetheless. You know when a minute has passed, or when an hour has vanished while you were daydreaming. You can feel the stretch of boredom, the rush of urgency, the blink of a moment. This isn't just philosophical musing. Your brain actually tracks time using specialized neural circuits, especially in the basal ganglia and prefrontal cortex. These areas help you estimate durations, predict intervals, and keep track of the flow of events. Of course, time is slippery. It slows down when you're waiting for water to boil. It speeds up when you're on vacation. It warps under stress and dances under nostalgia. Your sense of time is less like a stopwatch and more like a flexible ruler, bending with your feelings, context, and attention. Children often feel time differently than adults. Remember how summer holidays used to feel endless, and now they're over before your sunscreen's even dry. That's not just age, it's perception shifting and evolving as you grow. Some people may even experience distorted time perception due to neurological conditions, trauma, or certain substances. In these cases, seconds stretch into hours, or time seems to vanish entirely. Time, it seems, is not only relative in physics, it's wildly subjective in the brain. Then we arrive at the fringes of sensory science, where curiosity outpaces certainty. There's magnetoreception, the ability to sense the Earth's magnetic field. Birds, turtles, and some insects use it to navigate across oceans and continents. For a long time it was assumed that humans had no such ability, but recent research suggests we might have a very faint magnetic sense, not enough to guide us home without Google Maps, but perhaps just enough to subtly influence our spatial awareness. One experiment placed people in a room with rotating magnetic fields, their brainwaves specifically, and the alpha band responded to the changes, even though the participants were unaware anything was happening. It's not conclusive proof that we're all secret compasses, but it does make you wonder. And while we're out here on the edge, let's talk about emergent senses, experiences that arise from the combination of other senses rather than from a single input. Take flavor, for instance. It's not just taste or smell. It's a synthesis of taste, smell, texture, temperature, sound, memory, and expectation. Your brain blends them into a unified, delicious experience. That's emergence. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Or think of body ownership, the sense that your limbs belong to you. This isn't innate, it's constructed by your brain using a mix of touch, vision, and proprioception. Disrupt those signals, and strange things happen, like in the famous rubber hand illusion, where people start to feel ownership over a fake hand just because it's being stroked in sync with their real one. Emergent senses are a reminder that perception is not a collection of separate windows. It's a woven tapestry, a system of systems. One sense may take the lead, but the others are always close behind, chiming in, blending, shaping the final picture. Even your sense of self, that stable feeling of being you, is in many ways an emergent property, a quiet integration of memory, body, awareness, interoception, emotional tone, and attention. It's a complex construction, continuously updated and adjusted, like a story being told moment by moment. So where does this leave us with the understanding that your senses are not fixed points on a list, but evolving processes? Some are ancient, others are subtle, some are mysterious, and others are just beginning. To be understood together, they form the living interface between you and the world. Not just detecting it, but interpreting, translating, and shaping your experience of it. Your body doesn't simply observe reality, it participates in it actively, intimately, moment to moment, and that makes you more than just a collection of organs and signals. It makes you a finely tuned perception machine, sensing not just the obvious, but the hidden layers of existence, the rhythms, the patterns, the feelings behind the facts. Even in stillness, even here lying quietly in the dark, you are sensing, perceiving, and constructing the world around and within you. By now you've met the performers, the eyes that drink in light, the skin that listens to touch the ears, that cradle sound, and the nerves that whisper of warmth and movement. But every symphony needs a conductor, someone to interpret the notes, to time the rhythm, to make meaning of it all. In your body, that conductor is the brain. It sits quietly in its protective skull, soft as tofu but packed with power, about 3 pounds of wet, electric mystery. It's here that all your sensory inputs converge, are interpreted, refined, and finally transformed into your experience of reality. But the brain is no passive receiver. It's not just sitting in the dark waiting for messages like a grumpy post office clerk. It's more like an enthusiastic editor, constantly guessing, predicting, and adjusting what you perceive before you even notice. Let's take sight for example. When your eyes send signals to your brain, the image that arrives isn't complete. There are blind spots, lighting changes, flashes, and distractions. But your brain doesn't just shrug and give up. It fills in the blanks, sharpens the edges, adjusts the colors, and creates a smooth, stable picture. Even more astonishing, your brain starts predicting what you're going to see before your eyes finish seeing it. This process is known as predictive processing. It's a bit like your brain says, based on the data so far, I bet this is what's about to happen. And most of the time it's right. The same thing happens with sound. If you've ever misheard lyrics or thought someone said your name when they didn't, you've experienced the brain's guessing game. It uses context, memory, and expectation to fill in gaps in the signal. And if the real input doesn't match the prediction, the brain just shrugs and updates the guess. It's like autocorrect for your senses, sometimes helpful, sometimes hilariously wrong. But why guess at all? Because raw sensory data is messy. It's full of noise and ambiguity. If your brain had to process everything exactly as it arrived, it would get overwhelmed. So instead, it does what any good conductor does. It interprets, filters, and prioritizes. It smooths the rough edges into a coherent experience. And it does it at incredible speed. Neurons, your brain's communication cells, send signals at up to 250 mph. There are roughly 86 billion of them, each forming thousands of connections. That's more connections than there are stars in the Milky Way. It's not just fast, it's dazzlingly complex. Different parts of your brain specialize in different sensory tasks. The occipital lobe at the back of your brain handles vision. The temporal lobes process sound and language. The parietal lobe manages touch and spatial awareness. The insula helps interpret internal sensations, hunger, heartbeat, emotion. And the prefrontal cortex just behind your forehead helps tie it all together, integrating inputs, deciding what to focus on, and crucially creating a sense of self. Your brain isn't just taking in the world, it's constructing it carefully, combining signals, applying memory, layering in emotion, and shaping what you perceive based on who you are and what you expect. This is why perception is never purely objective. 10 people can walk through the same room and come away with 10 different experiences. One notices the smell of coffee, another feels the draft by the door. Someone else can't stop thinking about the ticking clock. Your brain highlights what matters to you, quietly editing your version of reality. This process can also lead to some intriguing quirks. Take synesthesia, a condition where the senses blend together. People with synesthesia might hear music as colors or see letters with specific personalities, or taste textures and words. It's not a hallucination, it's just a different way the brain wires and interprets sensory input. Or consider aphantasia, the inability to form mental images. People with aphantasia can recall facts and ideas, but they don't see pictures in their minds. Meanwhile, others can imagine entire scenes in vivid detail. Again, same sensory systems, different brain interpretations. And then there's neuroplasticity, the brain's remarkable ability to rewire itself. When one sense is lost, the brain doesn't waste space. It reallocates those neural pathways to other tasks. For example, blind individuals often develop heightened hearing and touch because the visual cortex starts supporting those senses. It's like a theater that can rewrite its own script depending on which actors show up, even learning to use new tools. Like a prosthetic limb, a musical instrument, or a phone screen can change the way your brain maps your body. You don't just pick up new skills, you reshape the orchestra, but this power also makes the brain vulnerable. Conditions like sensory processing disorder, autism, or PTSD can change how the brain interprets sensory input. What might seem like a small noise to one person might feel like an alarm bell to another. Bright lights might be overwhelming. Soft fabrics might feel abrasive. The conductor is still there, but the instruments might be playing a different key, and that's not wrong, it's just different. Every brain has its own rhythm, its own filters, its own unique way of building reality from the same basic ingredients, and yet despite these differences, there's something deeply unifying in knowing that we all, every one of us, experience the world, not as it is, but as it is perceived, interpreted, shaped, and colored by memory, meaning, and attention. You're not just watching a sunset. You're feeling the warmth, remembering other evenings, hearing the wind, sensing time slipping by, all interpreted, filtered, and folded into one quiet, beautiful moment. The world flows in through your senses, the brain weaves it into music. And you're not just the listener, you are the composer, the conductor, and the orchestra, all at once. For most of us, our senses feel constant, quietly present, like background music. We don't really notice until the volume changes. But sometimes that music does change. A note drops out, a melody shifts, and when it does, your brain, remarkable as ever, finds a way to keep the song going. Sensory loss can come in many forms. It might be sudden or gradual. It might arrive with age, illness, injury, or genetics. A world once filled with color, taste, balance, or sound can grow quiet or dim. It's deeply personal, often emotional, and yet it reveals something extraordinary. The astonishing adaptability of the human body and mind. Take vision, for instance. When someone loses their sight, the brain doesn't just shut down the visual cortex and call it a day. Instead, those neural pathways begin to respond to other inputs, especially touch and sound. Blind individuals often have heightened abilities in these areas, not because their other senses magically become sharper, but because the brain reallocates processing power. The parts of the brain once devoted to vision now help decode the world in other ways. One of the most extraordinary examples of this is human echolocation. Some blind individuals learn to navigate by making clicking sounds with their mouths and listening for the echoes. It's the same principle bats and dolphins use, but in this case it's powered by practice, patience, and plasticity. Brain scans have shown that their visual cortex actually lights up when they echolocate. The brain sees sound, not metaphorically, literally. The same kind of adaptation happens with hearing loss. People who are deaf or hard of hearing often develop stronger visual or tactile awareness. Sign languages like American Sign Language, ASL, are not just hand gestures, they're full visual languages with grammar, rhythm, expression, and nuance. The brain treats them as equal to spoken language, using the same areas, like Broca's area, to process signed communication. In some cases, technology steps in to assist. Cochlear implants, for example, don't restore natural hearing, but they bypass damaged parts of the ear and send electrical signals directly to the auditory nerve. With time and training, the brain learns to interpret these signals as sound. An incredible blend of biology and engineering touch to adapt prosthetic limbs can now be wired to the nervous system, allowing users to control them with thought and even to feel sensations through them. These artificial limbs aren't just tools. With enough sensory feedback, the brain begins to accept them as part of the body. The boundaries of self stretch to include the synthetic, and for those who lose proprioception or balance, therapy often involves retraining the brain using visual cues, repetition, or even vibrating insoles that mimic natural feedback. It's not a perfect fix, but it's a testament to how flexible your brain can be when it needs to adapt. Sometimes, though, the changes are temporary. After a cold, your sense of smell might vanish along with your enjoyment of food. A concussion might scramble your balance. A loud concert might leave your ears ringing. And in those moments, you notice just how deeply your senses anchor you in the world. Losing even one, even briefly, feels disorienting, like a light switched off in a familiar room. But with rest, rehabilitation, or recalibration, many of these systems find their way back. The symphony may be quiet for a while, but the instruments still remember how to play. And even when the change is permanent, something beautiful often happens. The body finds new rhythms. People learn new ways to move, speak, connect, and experience. A person who can no longer hear music may feel it through vibrations. A person who cannot see color may come to treasure patterns, textures, and light in different forms. A person who cannot walk may find profound grace in stillness. None of these adaptations are easy. They require effort, support, and resilience, but they reveal something profound. Perception is not fixed. It's not a rigid structure. It's a living, changing process. Your senses are not just passively collecting data. They are deeply embedded in how you think, feel, and live. When they shift, your reality shifts, and yet you remain. You, more than the sum of your inputs, more than your eyes, ears, skin, and nerves. You are the conscious listener of the world, the one who adjusts the dials, who rewrites the music when the notes go missing. And so, as we near the end of this journey through the senses, perhaps it's worth taking a quiet moment of appreciation for the scent of morning coffee, the comfort of your favorite blanket, the sound of a loved one's voice, the colors of the evening sky, the gentle pull of gravity beneath your feet. These are not just details, they are you, the ever-changing way your body and mind meet the world. And if that changes, you will change with it. Because the symphony may evolve, but the song goes on. You've made it to the end of a journey, one that traveled not across continents or galaxies, but within the quiet corridors of your own body. From the way your eyes gather light to the whisper of your heartbeat in your chest, your senses shape your experience of the world, and not just five of them, but a whole orchestra playing in harmony, balance, movement, temperature, pain, time, emotion, and the unseen signals deep within. Your body doesn't just observe life, it feels it. It curates the story, paints the picture, conducts the music. You're not just a passenger in this experience. You are the composer, the listener, the conductor. And maybe now, as you rest, you notice the world a little more vividly. The faint texture of the sheets beneath your fingertips, the distant hum of night sounds, the quiet rhythm of your breath, the way your body knows it is safe, still, and at ease. Each of these sensations is a reminder you are alive in a web of connection, surrounded by information, comfort, and presence, each thread part of the symphony of your senses. It's easy to forget how remarkable this is. We live so much of life on autopilot, not noticing how intricate, adaptive, and beautiful perception truly is. But when you pause and pay attention, even just for a moment, you begin to see the extraordinary in the ordinary. And now, as we draw to a close, I'd love to revisit the same questions we began with gently. Where in the world are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there for you? Whether you're winding down in a quiet bedroom, drifting off on a train, or lying on a couch with your phone half falling off your chest, I hope this journey has brought you a small sense of peace and wonder. And if you found this video helpful, interesting, or even just pleasantly sleepy, I would so appreciate it If you tap the like button, maybe subscribe to the channel, and leave a little comment below. I read everyone, and they helped more than you might think. And if you're still awake, well, I'm flattered. I did hope this wouldn't be so interesting that it kept you up all night. But if it has, at least you've learned something new about the magnificent, mysterious system that lets you experience life in the first place. You are a sensory symphony, a living composition, and even now in this quiet moment the music continues to play. Good night, sleep well, and thank you for listening.